You're listening to the Guys Who Do Stuff podcast. Get unstuck, tell a better story, and have a damn good answer to the question, what are you doing today?
So welcome to the Guys Who Do Stuff. We're back in the studio. This is the show where you get unstuck, tell a better story, and have a good answer to the question, what are you doing today? I'm Joe. This is
Joshua.
That's right. It's a day. We're very excited to be welcoming our guest. Josh, set up our guest for the peoples.
What a fun setup. This is our first episode. We're on camera, and we are here with our buddy, colleague here, and his name is Scott Brownlow.
That is correct, Scott Brownlow.
Ding, ding, ding.
I'm just making sure the low is low and the low is not high.
You'd be surprised how often people ask me how to spell that last name. It's just two regular words, brown and low.
Just mix them up. That's a good response. I like that. So you tell us a little bit about why you're here today.
Yeah.
What are you excited about?
My biggest passion, pretty much every day, is fish tanks. Actually, it goes beyond the tanks. Fish in general. I spend my weekends going down to the creeks, collecting samples, looking at the native populations. It's a good time right now because the blueheads are spawning.
Is this different than what most people would consider like the hobby of fishing? Like you're not going out with a pole all the time? How are you collecting these samples?
It's a mix. There's some interesting laws where there are certain fish you can only collect with a pole.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to be kind of careful which ones I'm actually taking back with me. But
really? There's some fish that you can't catch with a pole?
So any game fish in North Carolina, you are not legally allowed to collect with a net. So I got to take those nets out only for bait fish, smaller little guys.
Oh, gotcha.
But I got a good, probably if we were to go out into my car right now, it would smell like fish. It'd be several buckets. My skateboards that I use just to kind of get around from the creek to creek.
Yeah.
And fishing poles, nets. Probably 3 nets that kind of poke into my driver's seat a little bit because they're too long for the car, but
yeah,
make it work.
So we want to jump into the fish thing a lot more in detail, but let's start talking about what your day job is for a bit.
Sure, yeah.
You have a day job.
I do have a day job. Keeps me from fishing, but I enjoy it. No, I work at the North Carolina Bankers Association. I'm the creative director there, so I do a lot of our marketing materials. If you work in banking, you have most likely gotten an email from me at some point. What I like about it is I get to do a lot of graphic design, and it's a way to kind of combine science and art. I was never that great with hand-eye coordination as a kid, so pencil and I, we don't get along too well. But when I get like a stylus out and I have, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, just the Adobe Suite software type stuff.
Yeah.
It's different. I like it allows me to kind of use some of that math mind in a creative, artistic way. And I think that's kind of what I like about, the fish hobby too. You're taking something that it's ecology, right? It's science. You're studying the biology of these creatures, their social interactions, and then you're using that information to create the ideal environment for them. And you can do it any way that you can imagine. There are so many different variations of techniques and setups. So I just like those sort of things that allow you to be creative and logical at the same time and kind of combine those two worlds.
How long have you been the creative executive?
So creative director.
Creative director, sorry.
I think I've been in that title for about 6 years now.
Wow.
Started as a director of communication, but I'm not the best at communicating. So when I had the opportunity to change
know
that
your
title,
strengths, man.
yeah, I'm more of the creative than the communicator. So when I had the opportunity, I just kind of switched over my title. A lot of the same responsibilities, but kind of just a different focus.
Yeah.
Been nice.
So when did your kind of passion for collecting fish begin?
Y'all are going to think this is silly, but have you guys ever seen the show River Monsters?
Oh, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
Jeremy
Discovery
Wade.
Channel.
Oh, yeah.
I think everybody got addicted to that when it came out. It was.
So, yeah, Jeremy Wade is my boy. I will always vouch for Jeremy Wade. His show kind of just opened my eyes to oh, there's this whole world of unseen like monsters. I mean, yeah, river monsters. That's what, that's where you get it from. But, and then as I started exploring my own backyard, the creeks, there's a little pond across the street even. I'm pretty sure it's man-made, but somehow it's populated. Like the creeks have provided. And it's been just kind of cool to just see the so-called monsters that are just kind of living right behind me.
So we had talked about that previously, about how these little fish that you find that you bring in and they adapt to their environment. They were being removed from their school and they learn to live in a new environment. They grow large,
Yeah.
right? Some of them grow too large, right?
Oh, yeah. We have my buddy, a fellow member of my fish crew, the Dirty Rotten Fishmongers.
Yeah.
Dirty Rotten Fish.
Yeah.
That needs a theme song. Like, insert theme song here.
We got a hashtag, DRFM life, but
It sounds very dirty.
so,
It is fishy.
so my buddy, he's got a pond that's, he dug it out in his backyard. Doesn't connect to any natural bodies, so we don't have to worry about fish escaping into the creeks. Anything that we collect from outside that outgrows the tank ends up in that pond.
Wow.
And since it's all native fish anyway, we're basically recreating like these outdoor environments in another outdoor environment.
So how do you compensate for flowing water? If they came from a creek, now they're living in a bed of clay and water in a pool, basically. How's that happen?
So in the pond, we have a pretty hefty filtration system going. But these fish actually, they tend to kind of move in between the creeks and the like deeper pools. They use the creeks for nesting mostly. Bluehead chubs in particular, the ones that I've been collecting most recently.
The bluehead chubs.
Can we get a
Oh,
shot?
yeah.
I got to show Joe a bluehead chub. I've been thinking about telling Joe about the bluehead chub, but
Let me pull this guy up.
Anytime somebody says, I want to show you
Well,
a bluehead chub and pulls out their phone,
This
I
kinda-
instantly don't
I
want
mean-
anything to do with it.
I'm thinking that might be a bluehead chub. I mean, that just happens to be what we have on the table.
No, that's too horny.
That's a horny bluehead chub, people.
It's a narwhal. You got to hold your phone closer to that camera. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There's, yep, there's the bluehead chub happening.
And, they're actually part of a clade called the horny head chubs.
Oh, come on. Whoever is discovering these fishes.
Yeah, there was something intentional there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they actually, they'll collect these little pebbles
Right.
in their mouths and they build these giant mounds where they lay their eggs. So if you're ever out in the creek in North Raleigh, Crabtree Creek, for instance, and you see like what looks like a man-made structure, it's the fish doing it, and they're laying their eggs inside of these nests using the pebbles to kind of aerate. As the water flows through the pebbles, it provides a high oxygen environment where the eggs are able to mature more quickly.
Isn't that just like broadcasting to anybody that wants eggs? Like, hey, that's where they live.
Well, so they do actually, they have a plan for that too. The bluehead chubs, they...
Every time you say bluehead chubs, the 12-year-old boy in me is like,
It took me a while before I could say it without kind of giggling,
yeah.
So they cohabitate their nest with all the other minnows of the stream. In this case, it's swallowtail shiners, spot-tail shiners, white shiners. A few darters tend to kind of hang out there and probably try to predate on some of the eggs. But they intentionally create this community so that when the predators come looking for their eggs, they're going to find the eggs from these other fish first, the ones who are not burying them deep in the mounds.
Those
And
blue-headed chubs.
yeah,
Let's
You-
sacrifice the other fish.
you can tell when you're out there, their numbers get huge this time of year. I catch almost nothing else.
I'd never even heard of that type of fish before.
No, me either.
You must not. They must be tough to catch with a pole. Like you never hear anybody being like, "Yeah, caught me that
They're
blue-headed chub."
actually, they get to about the size. I think their max size is about 14 inches. They can get pretty big. They're not desirable fish to catch because they're pretty easy.
So you were telling me about your home, and in I think it's in your bedroom or somewhere. You have many aquariums, and we were talking about freshwater versus salt, and I know some people with saltwater, and you were
Yeah.
saying kind of why you just stick with freshwater. Could you tell us a little about that?
So freshwater was my starting point. It was what I could get into because it was what was near me. I started exploring it, and it turns out that freshwater, saltwater, basically different hobbies. They're both fish hobbies, but like the sort of parameters that you have to track, the sort of work that goes into saltwater is very different than the work that goes into freshwater. And I just kind of like keeping things simple, so I've stuck with
Sure.
freshwater the whole time.
Now, if we lived near the coast, would you reconsider that because
Oh
of the
yeah,
access to saltwater? Yeah.
that would be.
Yeah.
I would love that. No,
Right.
I mean, I do keep a blackwater tank, which it's a little similar to running a saltwater tank. Very different parameters. So your average fish tank uses bacteria to convert ammonia to nitrite, and then a different type of bacteria to convert nitrite to nitrate. Nitrate is not very toxic to fish. Ammonia is. And plants will use the nitrate to kind of grow, and that's how it gets removed from the tank. In blackwater, that bacteria dies. It like, can't survive that level of acidity. And so instead, this fungal colony begins to develop in the leaf litter, and the fungal colony converts the ammonia to ammonium by combining it with, I think, a positively charged hydrogen, something like that. I'm not a chemist.
Can we you sound like a bit of a chemist, Scott, but what's the unpack the leaf litter?
So when I'm out there in the creeks, if I find like a really good oak leaf, and oak leaves are good because they tend to last a while in the water before they start decomposing.
That's something we have a lot of here in the Raleigh area is oak
Oh, yeah.
leaves, the city of oaks, right?
We are blessed there.
So fall is an exciting time for a fisher, a man of are you a fisher of men or a man of fishing?
I,
It's nice to put a fish with a face, Scott, by the way.
I'm just a fisher.
Yeah. So back to the leaf litter. So you're happy about fall here and back to the leaf, the oak leaf.
Yeah, so as these leaves decompose, they actually, in the water, I take them back and put them in my tank. They start to stain the water a brownish color, like tea. I mean, it actually is the same process. It's tannins. And the tannins have all sorts of medicinal properties for fish that are antifungal, antimicrobial. They actually somehow have profungal and promicrobial qualities for the good ones, the kind that you want in your tank. And as this decomposes, the acidity in the tank starts to drop, and it creates something called humic acid, which buffers the pH down. So I've got some very delicate fish that come from acidic peat swamps, Malaysia, Indonesia. Had them shipped to me, which was pretty exciting.
That's a beautiful thing because, oh yeah, that too, the shipping thing, we got to talk about that. But this whole thing about the leaf giving life to what's under the water, because in the forests and in nature, this is all falling and happening in the fall especially, and it's just the cycle of life happening. And you get to really see that and embrace that and be a part of that in a way. Like that's...
And so I've learned from each of my tanks, the first one I set up, I did it the way probably a lot of people listening would do it. I did the fishless cycle where, you add ammonia for a month or two, and then test for nitrates, all that stuff.
This is not the way most people do it. So like, as a guy that knows nothing about fish and had a couple fish with the kids, what normal people do is fill it up with tap water, get a couple little pebbles that somebody at the store says you need so you don't kill the fish, and then just set the bag in there. So what you're describing feels like
like, I guess this is like
the scientific approach that's like
the next level up from there.
Yeah.
But so what I started doing instead, I started kind of going with a much more natural method where now each tank I kind of iterated on this, but now I'm throwing the trimmings from all my plants from other tanks. I'm throwing them into a bucket, letting them turn into mulm, letting them decay, and I'll put leaves from outside in there, twigs.
Turn into mulm?
Mulm.
Mulm. What a fun words you got to use in this thing, man.
Oh, between horny head chubs and everything else.
And a good mulm in the morning.
Man, There's some good lingo
full
here.
of tannins. Give me them moles
It
and
seems
tannins,
like
girl.
everything that I wouldn't do as a person that owns a fish. What you want to do is throw some leaves in there till the water turns brown. Like, okay.
Let me ask you a question to finish up on what you shared about your fish. Do you still have a fish?
Oh no, that thing died. I mean, most of those fish didn't make it the week.
All right.
Well, so once this mulm starts going, you get these little microorganisms that start to come in from the leaves and stuff outside, and they start to feed on it. They colonize it. These are little crustaceans, ostracods, copepods, amphipods. These things, if you let them develop for a while before you add the fish in, they'll serve as food for the fish. I don't even feed some of my tanks all that often because there's enough in there where they just hunt. So I've started really going for this approach where I'm building from the bottom up, starting with the smallest elements of the food chain, little microorganisms.
Yeah.
That they have a, in addition to serving as a food source for the fish, they'll eat all the decaying plant matter. And so it creates this sense of stability in the system where every little thing in there plays its own part and it's there
Right.
for a reason.
So do you help people get started with their tanks? Is that something that you do?
I try to as often as possible. People who don't want tanks.
You're like, I've installed tanks in hundreds of homes that people didn't even know.
I'm pushing the hobby wherever I can because I just like having people to talk to about it. You know, it's fun to.
Yeah, so I'm curious about, like, you mentioned you go out and collect. Like, what does that look like? When I think go out and collect, I'm using the terms like I got the fishing pole and I'm going fishing.
That's largely what it is. I get some wader boots on. I have like a little, I don't know what the box. I think it's actually meant for like organizing your mail or something. But it's this little plastic or acrylic see-through box that I use where I put the fish in. Actually, let me pull up a photo.
You able to use everything in a backpack? You have like a bug out bag?
Oh yeah, that's constantly packed in my car.
Cool. Do you use any live bait?
I do. Almost all the bait that I use is live, just stuff that I collect from the area.
So is it more like trapping then? You're waiting for them to come eat something and you catch them with the net?
When I'm netting, it's much more kind of tracking them, watching them for a while. I'll stand there for like 2 hours sometimes, just kind of watching a school of fish to kind of learn their behaviors, figure out.
How have you not been arrested? There's just a man.
He's not hurting anyone.
Staring at the water.
Joe.
He's been there for 2 hours, officer.
I do think about that sometimes when I'm in a creek that like kind of backs up to someone's yard.
Yeah, never do it in a creek that backs up to an elementary school.
There's a dude staring at the body of water in my woods.
Well, so I've got this little box here. You can't hear me when I do that. I've got this little box right here. Okay. I think that's a...
More in the middle and toward me.
Yeah, no.
Oh, wait.
We
Oh,
see
you
it.
can see it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Closer to the middle of the lens. There you
So you can kind of catch them and then look at them.
So, yeah, I use that for viewing, and then there's an app, iNaturalist, that I use to kind of ID the species. It adds a little tag to a map, so anyone who is in
that's
the
cool.
area can go on.
Like
and
geocaching for fish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good way to describe it.
Are there certain seasons you prefer being out? I mean, imagine it's like fall and winter, right?
It's any time except winter. Winter, I'm not finding anything. I mean, I'll catch stuff with hook and line sometimes, but I can't do any netting.
Have you ever observed any owls or eagles or ospreys or anything just swooping in while you're being real still and observing? Oh, you have really?
Yeah. I mean,
I
all
love that.
kinds of wildlife will approach.
Sure.
There's like
Because you're part of the environment, part of the scene for an hour or so. You blend in, right?
There's this deer that hangs out in the woods by one of my little fishing spots. I saw him every day for a summer, and by the end, he was just kind of coming up right next to me.
Smelling you? Did he come up and smell you?
No, I never got that close, but he'd be like drinking out of the water.
That's awesome.
And it was cool.
Oh, let's talk a little bit about shipping, because when we first had this chat, it's like, that's an exciting topic.
Oh, yeah.
So you have some fish that are not native to this local area. How did you acquire those fish?
It's a mix. There are a few shops around in the Raleigh area that I like to go to. Fish Room, Aquarium Outfitters, the other Fish Room. It's a pretty niche hobby.
The other fish room.
Let's say you want something from, I don't know, around the world. How do you do that? And is that popular?
Yeah. Most people are not going to be ordering their fish online. Like your average person is going to just go to one of the shops around here. If there's a species that I can't find in a shop around here, I am happy to go and pay the $40 to get it overnighted. It's a pretty cool process. They package it up in, so first the fish is in a bag like you would get at a store, oxygen in half the bag, water in the other half. And they put that bag inside a styrofoam box with like some sort of insulation in between the styrofoam and the bag. That box goes in a shipping box. This end up, animal inside written on top. Sometimes they respect that there's an animal inside it, and sometimes you just gotta kind of hope.
I love those Ring doorbell footage of like the Amazon delivers that don't give a crap.
Oh,
They're just
yeah.
like, they get like halfway to the house and they're like, there's crap.
I mean, a lot of times these folks are delivering in the wee hours when it's dark, and I don't see them reading carefully the package. Is there a certain color that says animal inside, or is it just in a marker? Like,
It was, last time I got it, it was in Sharpie on top. So
there you go. So it's hard to say.
I
But
will say,
yeah.
shout out to my, delivery guys. They have done a great job. I've not had any losses. So
It's great.
So I'm curious, do you enjoy eating fish?
I actually do not. It's not even like about like, so it's not even about
It's not like your love for the fish.
some sort of ethical issue. Yeah, no, I just don't really like the taste of seafood.
I always get
I would love to like the taste of fish so that I could,
yeah.
do more than put them in my tank.
That's
I
like
could-
my relationship with wine. Every 6 months, I'm like, people like
Yeah.
wine. I try and I'm like, this is crappy juice. I don't want anything to do with this. And fish is one of those things where like people are like, what's great fish? It doesn't taste like fish. What other food is categorized like that? I just don't like my steak to taste like steak.
What is your favorite meat? Are you a vegetarian?
I'm not. Guess lamb. Lamb would be my go-to.
Lamb's a good one. So back to like getting to help people with their stuff. And so you have tell us about your social media stuff. What are you trying to get accomplished? What kind of message do you want to spread?
What's your goals and visions and dreams?
All right. Well, I would ideally, I'd like to be breeding some of these fish on a larger scale.
Whoa. Okay, go ahead. You could keep going. I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can get into that. I mean, we've got a tank set up right now where there's nothing in it at the moment. We just transfer in, a male and a female that like each other very much, leave them in overnight, and in the morning, take them out so the eggs don't all get eaten. And yeah.
But there's only 2 fish in there. They're eating their own eggs.
Oh, yeah.
Fish aren't smart.
It depends on the species. There are species that will, they'll pick their eggs up in their mouths and they'll keep them safe in there from other fish. They won't eat them. There are species that make nest inside of eggs like hermit crabs. There are species that make bubble nests where they'll get their mucus, blow bubbles in the water, put the eggs inside, and attach them to things. So there are good parents in the fish world. These ones just are not.
What? How do you? Can you crossbreed them? Is that common, or will fish usually? Will goldfish breed with a beta, or?
A goldfish will not breed with a beta, but you can definitely you can mix similar species. It's not advised. There are some ethical considerations with because there's a part of the hobby involves like conservation, and so with the licorice gourami that I keep, for instance, I'm gonna butcher this Latin name. I took Spanish and Russian, so Peros prominus nagii.
Sounds good. I have a question. Does the sexual anatomy strangely differ in any way, or is it just they're all running around with penises and vaginas?
Is very, very different between genuses.
This is
In
the
fact,
big question you wanted to know about the fish.
well, so
I'm serious, man. You're breeding. You got to know this stuff. I was raised on a horse farm, and we'd have a horse come over. A stud would breed the mare, and I would be the kid that would tell my dad when he's flagging. So there's this whole process when you're breeding intentionally, So what's that look like?
well, first off, I gotta say, there's actually no such thing as a fish. Fish is not like a real all of the animals that we call fish.
Is this like birds aren't real? This is like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
TED Talk you're working on?
It's I
Fish
mean,
aren't real.
it's pretty similar. I mean, we use fish to describe all of these species, but some of them are as distantly related as, they are to us. It's fish. It's a nice term for hobbyists. That's how I like to think of it. I call my crayfish, they're my fish. My shrimp, they're fish. Anything that I can put in the water, it's a fish. But
Yeah.
That's interesting.
so,
Are they? Oh, go ahead.
well, so their genitalia will differ as much as you would expect from creatures that are bad.
He's humoring you.
different.
He doesn't want to talk about this.
I'm visualizing it, guys. I'm being led on a visual journey by our creative director,
Oh,
who's a
geez.
fish expert. Okay,
This
Lay
took a
on.
weird turn.
Yeah. Well, it started with bluehead chubs, and now here we are.
Full circle. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So you mentioned you wanted to breed them. You said there's an element of conservation to it. So ideally, let's say you continue to progress, you breed the rare fish. Are you giving them away? Are you supplying stores? Are you making a delicious blue chip sushi roll that's selling at the sushi Thai?
So I would say it would depend on the species and the fish. Some of them I would probably like to, sell at a larger scale just to kind of support the conservation efforts.
So like for restocking purposes.
Exactly.
It'd be great to, hey, we're going to restock the Neuse River with bluehead chubs, everybody. I don't even know if that's a river fish, but you get what I'm saying.
Well, and even beyond restocking, the licorice gourami that I keep, they're endangered. They're not endangered.
They sound delicious.
I would not recommend popping one in your mouth.
you've tried it, I'm sure.
I've not, but I would.
What's the wildest thing you've ever done with a fish? You don't have to answer that.
Put it in a tank.
So
Put it in a bucket. I do have like some ponds outside that are made from like 5-gallon buckets where I use them for mosquito control. I've got some gambusia that they're invasive everywhere else in the world, but here in North Carolina, they're natives. And they got exported everywhere because they're mosquito eaters. Their common name is mosquito fish, and it's like the only thing that they eat most of the time.
That is huge. I mean, you think about the mosquitoes are a big deal. It's like, why did God create them? But they spread things around through blood, right? So that's their job. But like having that sort of natural answer to the $50, $60, $70, $80 a month people are paying for mosquito treatment seems to me like a wise move financially and for peace. I mean, you got fish you're looking at that are eating the mosquitoes.
Well, and it kind of, when you use nature to accomplish something, not just to look pretty, but to have a function like that, I don't know. There's a nice creative feeling that goes with it.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, it's a lot like gardening or any kind
Yeah.
of hobby where you get out in nature, you're doing something connected, and then if you can actually produce something, that's pretty cool. You feel like a farmer, like a fish farmer.
Yeah, back to the breeding. On that note, didn't we say there was some sort of little thing that drops out of the trees that you drop in that they breed inside and stay safe in? What was that thing we talked about with the little
The Gumtree pods.
Gumtree pods
Yeah,
in the
those-
South? They're everywhere.
Those little spiky
You know those
balls.
things,
you
Sean?
Oh, they
throw
have
them
a
at your
function
siblings?
other
Yeah.
than,
They have a function.
Destroying my feet when I used to walk upon my driveway.
They're like nature's annoying Legos.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you just tell Joe about that real quick? That's a great.
Yeah, so they add tannins to the water just like the leaves, but in addition, all those little holes that the seeds came out of, those are the perfect hiding spot for microcrustaceans, baby shrimp, small fish, and very small fish. I'm talking fry, which that's baby fish. I need to be careful with my lingo. And so it keeps them safe from larger predators, and they can start to form colonies and reproduce, and then you end up with like a ongoing food supply.
Scott and I had this idea about taking little weights somehow and attaching a little weight to the end of the little, what is it called?
The stem of it,
The stem
of the gum pod.
Of the gum pod, the stem of the gum pod, so that it would sink it down, and then the gum pod would float like a little balloon on the bottom of the tank. So if you put 10 of them with little weights, it'd be kind of a cool feature. So we're kind of going to work on that and patent it and sell it and get rich.
That's right. Yeah, we've been workshopping some of our fish tank decor.
Yeah, we can't talk too much about it right now.
So where can people follow what you have going on so they can kind of get a sense of like what you're up to, fish you're catching, all that kind of stuff?
So until yesterday, I had an Instagram handle that I could not pronounce or remember. And so this morning, I changed it to Itchy Algae. Very easy to remember. I'm a big King of a Hill fan. Save Itchy Algae. It was an episode. Y'all don't need to know all my King of a Hill trivia. I got a lot of it.
That's cool. So how many followers do you have right now? Like, tell us a little bit about the community kind of thing.
Oh, it's nothing.
So have you ever done anything like this or just?
No. This is my first time. My wife and I are actually planning on kind of doing a little bit more on social media involving fish. We haven't launched anything yet, but we recently bought some equipment, getting set up for whatever our first venture ends up being. We'd like to kind of document both some of the collection aspects as well as the care aspects for some of the more unique species that, other people aren't really covering in the fish tuber community.
The fish tuber.
Thing. Yeah.
It is a thing. I bet there's every kind of tuber.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And with your skills with a camera and your access to the lenses and your macro shots of your fish on the Instagram, it's really visually, just fun to look at. And
let me show off a few if y'all don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, fish are fun to look at. Does anybody know the origin of why fish show up in so many dating apps? Like the guy's always holding the fish.
Huh. I haven't noticed that. I guess I'm not looking at dating apps.
All right, check out this. He's showing us another photo here.
So these are the licorice gourami here, along with my beta in the background, just kind of lurking.
The licorice gourami.
And so licorice gourami are actually, they're a close relative of betas. Not the same genus, but within the same family. They breathe oxygen from the air, just like betas do. So they come up to the surface, take a gulp. Their habitats are being destroyed right now, but there is a large community kind of internationally working to preserve them, to spread information about them and awareness about the peat swamps that they come from. And hopefully we'll be able to see these species in the wild continue to flourish in a few years. But right now it's not looking great for them.
Well, that's an interesting angle too. When you have so much development going on, like in our area, you have a lot of displaced wildlife, and how do you handle that from, there's so many of them, different species of things,
Well, and you can definitely, you can see the impact up close. Like when I'm out there in the streams and I'm near a construction site, I know I'm not going to catch a lot just because.
All that runoff from that development. Yeah.
So what would be your elevator pitch to try to help somebody get excited about the hobby the way that you have? Like what's the top 3 things that you should know about fish collecting, fish mongering?
Number 1.
What's the name of your group again?
Dirty Rotten Fishmongers.
All right, if you want to be in the DRFM, here's the top 3 things you need to know.
How to roll.
I would say my one. This is just top 1. This is really the main thing you need to know if you want to get into the hobby. Is there is room to experiment and learn in a hands-on way. There's all this advice out there. You can go on YouTube, you can go on Reddit, all the sites. It's good. I would suggest familiarizing yourself with that, but learn by doing, because that is what is awesome about this process. I would say that keeping fish has taught me a surprising amount about not just, ecology on this smaller level, but about kind of the world in general. Here's a small example. This is y'all are gonna laugh at this, but so I noticed at one point early on into my fish keeping career that I refer to it as a career. So I noticed that if you made a small adjustment to the filtration and ended up killing your colony of beneficial bacteria, you crash the whole tank very easily when you don't know what you're doing. And so what I started doing was adding a diversity of bacteria, getting some sources. Like I have a water of different pHs in different buckets where I have different things decaying, and then I put them into the filter. And the more diverse these colonies became, the more stable they'd be and the more sturdy they'd be against collapse, essentially. And so how this worked is that no one single type of bacteria can take over when there's all these different ones competing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I came in drinking kombucha this morning. I realized, oh, wow, I can apply that same sort of stuff to my own life in terms of my health. Like, yeah, increase the diversity. Works in the fish tank. Why won't it work here?
Yeah.
And then
That is like a tenet of a lot of like dietitians will tell you, eat a diverse range, fruits and veggies, eat them when they're in season. Don't just stick to one thing. I mean, it translates to a lot of stuff. I do a gardening podcast, and one of the worst things for the environment has been how much we love grass. So now we've got one plant on the majority of all of our lawns, as opposed to this diversity of plants that helps. And we're wondering, like, what happened to the bees? They don't eat grass, man.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, and it can be, it's a lesson that you can kind of project out to anything.
Yeah. Don't just do one thing. Although there's conventional wisdom that says being a jack of all trade and master of none is bad. But, I've never really met somebody that's really awesome at a lot of stuff that's like, yeah, see, there's the example. So that's one piece of conventional wisdom I kind of I question. Like, oh, you're good at a lot of stuff. Yeah, sucks to be you. I don't.
You can be a jack of most trades, and that's, maybe a good compromise, middle ground.
Yeah.
But no, yeah. It's things like that. Another little example would be in my tanks when I adjust one parameter. So say, for instance, I'm trying to lower the pH in my blackwater tank.
Mm-hmm.
To do that, I have to end up, the process reduces the calcium in the water column. And so all of a sudden my KH drops. Now I have to adjust that parameter. And so seeing the way that all of these little things are interconnected, from the very bottom of the food chain, I'm talking just like microbes eating dying leaves, all the way up to the fish. And seeing the way everything interacts in a closed system like that, it's awesome. That's what it is for me, really, in the hobby. It's being able to look at a system and see every part of it.
Yeah.
And the more you zoom in, the more you see.
That's very cool, man. Thanks for taking the time and coming educating us a little bit about fish and just the general life lesson of, hey, you should diversify your hobbies, people. Let's not be the people that just do the one thing, but, do the stuff.
Yeah, we find it fascinating. I found it fascinating talking with you, knowing you, working with you, and then knowing this side of you and this passion for this thing that's different from my passions. And I appreciate nature and I appreciate what you're doing. And sharing that with the world is a joy, man. Helping you share that with the world is a joy. So thanks for being here.
So get into fish. They got sweet names about licorice and Chubs.
That's right.
They're all very phallic, these fish names.
They are. And they're fun to watch.
Go get yourself a tank, grab yourself a horny head chub, throw it in there.
And call it and relax, people. Remember, there is joy in the water.
Thank you for listening to the Guys Who Do Stuff podcast. Visit guyswhodostuff.com. You probably shouldn't Google that. Don't miss this stuff. Subscribe today.